Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Big Sky Virtual Town Hall. Tonight's program is brought to you by Big Sky Build and by the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. Thank you both for helping underwrite this 9th session of the virtual town hall meeting. Today, Montana moved into phase 2 of Governor Steve Bullock's reopening plan, and we have quite a show for you. My local editor for EBS newspaper, Brandon Walker, is having his debut this evening. He's joining me today to chat with some of the leaders in our Big Sky community. Among them are Tim Drain with Natural Resources, Candace Carr Strauss with Visit Big Sky and the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce, and Erik Morrison with Big Sky Town Center. We are pleased and honored to have you all with us. Thank you for joining us. These speakers, these panelists are all looking at how various businesses and organizations are reacting to and preparing for phase 2 of this reopening process, and what what could be a busy summer in Montana. Then we're going to be speaking with Kris Inman, wildlife biologist and bear researcher, about a tragic grizzly attack in Big Sky Memorial Day. We hope you'll stick around for all of these engaging conversations. But first, let's talk short-term rentals. Tim Drain is the GM for the vacation rental company Natural Retreats, Big Sky. While the COVID-19 pandemic left a deep scar on reservations in March, we wanted to hear from Tim on how things are looking as of today, the start of phase 2 of Montana's reopening plan. Tim, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Yeah. Natural Retreats is a national organization. Tell us what you guys do and how you operate in Big Sky.
Certainly. So obviously, vacation rentals are the core of our business. In Big Sky, we have a couple other unique businesses that we don't have in the rest of our operations, which are a private Yellowstone tour company, Yellowstone Luxury Tours, and transportation, mainly airport transfers, which is shuttle to Big Sky. But essentially, we have the support structure and the backing of a national company with the mainly the sales and marketing initiatives of a large national company with the boots on the ground operation here in Big Sky. So we've got all of our property managers, guest services team, or all the local staff here in Big Sky. So people that have been in the Big Sky community here for years, eating, sleeping, and breathing Big Sky. So it's, I think it really strikes a really good balance in the vacation rental world, because like I mentioned, we have those larger support structures that we need while having the local expertise as well. And that's really played very true over these last 10 weeks or so here. Having leadership teams or ops teams that are based out of our central offices that have been able to do a lot of the heavy lifting with, sourcing best practices, helping us source, equipment, cleaning products, et cetera, that have, I think really prepared us really well to be able to, continue to operate during this whole COVID-19 pandemic and all of the uncertainties and, potential health risks that are out there for everybody. So I feel really confident that, our team is very well prepared to have a successful summer.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to hear. It's obviously a very difficult time for a lot of people. You saw short-term rental numbers drop off as much as 97% in March. How low have those numbers gotten, and what was going through your mind, at the time?
Yeah, I mean, probably the first thing going through everybody's mind was, geez, what's going to happen to our business? Are we going to make it out of this? The travel industry as a whole has by far been the hardest hit sector of our economy, not just in Big Sky, but nationwide, worldwide. So there was, a lot of concern, a lot of uncertainties there. Luckily, Natural Retreats has taken a very progressive stance of not laying off any people, knowing that we need to have all of our people in place when things start to bounce back here, and have us positioned to be a leader in the vacation rental market here. So a lot of those concerns I think are they're still lingering there, because nobody knows what's going to happen 4 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months down the road from us here, if there's going to be a resurgence of COVID, or if it's going to be something that kind of goes by the wayside and we do start to operate normally again. But, like I mentioned, we've had those support systems in place and a lot of great resources internally to calm some of those concerns and some of those fears that, myself and other staff might have had, and be able to really, develop an action plan to be able to come out of this thing as successfully as anybody can.
Gotcha, for sure. Well, since Governor Bullock announced phase 2 beginning today, have you been seeing a change in reservation numbers over the past couple weeks?
We have, earlier today I was just kind of reviewing some numbers, and basically, when you start back in March, I think March 12th was when we had, revised our cancellation policy to allow guests that were affected by this to reschedule their travel. We saw on the 13th and 14th cancellations start to trickle through. The 15th, the resort announced that they were closing early and just saw a flood of cancellations come through. When I say cancellations, I mean, canceled but rescheduled. So the owners were still able to keep that money on the books for those future stays there. And then over the course of, really mid-March through mid-May, very little booking activity coming in, with the exception of rebookings for next winter mainly. There was a slow trickle of late summer bookings and some bookings for next winter as well. But since literally the day after the governor announced that the quarantine was lifting as of June 1st, we went from, just falling deeper and deeper and deeper off pace for the summer to actually having more than closed that gap now as of today. We're actually pacing slightly ahead of last year for July and August. June is still down quite a bit, but down about 50% over last year for June. If you got to glean some kind of silver lining from that, June's not a super busy month, as we all know here in Big Sky. It's the second half of June when folks start to, get out of school and be able to start traveling, that we see some activity come back in strong numbers again. I think we'll see June start to pick up a little bit too, because we are seeing quite a few last minute bookings coming through. But I can confidently say and happily say that we're looking pretty strong for the summer. So it's just now a matter of managing that, and managing our homes, managing our guests, and managing this whole situation, and managing our teams in a safe way also.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads me into my my next question. That's great from a revenue standpoint. It's great from a business standpoint and economic standpoint of this community. It also it puts you and many other tourism dependent Big Sky businesses in a bit of a spot. How do you square tourist-based revenue that you need with health and safety?
The biggest aspect of it, I think, is, we spent this last 10 weeks completely rebuilding our housekeeping and cleaning and property management procedures. We're using, cleaning product that we didn't use in the past, that really nobody used in the past. We're using specialized equipment that you don't typically use in a hotel or in a vacation rental. We're literally using the cleaning product and the equipment that restoration companies use when you have a viral outbreak on a cruise ship and they shut it down and come in and completely disinfect everything. We've got, we're building up a little bit of an inventory of electrostatic sprayers. We've got some other sprayers and what have you as well, so that we can use the product a lot more efficiently, and so that it does a better job. It actually sticks to the surfaces better and is able to disinfect quicker and more thoroughly. So changing those procedures in terms of, the amount of, we are literally disinfecting every surface that could possibly be a transmission point. Other things like, bedding in our properties, for example, throw pillows, down comforters, things that can't be laundered in between stays are all unfortunately disappearing for the time being. It's really more of an aesthetic thing than anything else. Right now we've got some product in that is working in the meantime that we're able to, still launder 100% and launder up to the proper CDC recommended temperatures to kill any potential virus. We are also looking at sourcing some additional bedding as well, because we do want to still maintain that luxury brand and have a high quality product that we're still presenting to our guests, but we first and foremost need to do it safely. We've also adjusted our check-in and check-out times to allow our cleaners to have more time in the property. One, there's additional bedding that they have to launder, but also just more time spent cleaning. Also gives the home a little bit of time to kind of cool off, so to speak, after guests depart, and housekeepers aren't tripping over guests as they're departing. Additionally, Natural Retreats has invested a substantial amount of money in PPE for all of our team members. We're also giving our vendors access to order through us, so that some of the smaller, maybe mom and pop companies that otherwise might not have access to good pricing on a lot of this stuff, which is, fortunately, there's a lot of price gouging going on with masks and gloves and a lot of this stuff right now. So able to leverage our discounts for our vendors as well. Making sure that our staff and all of our partners, all of our vendors, that when they enter a home, they're well equipped to do so safely. Additionally, we're also changing the game a little bit too. A lot of times, if a guest called with really any need, we're going to address it, and we're going to be up at their property pretty quickly. Unfortunately, one of the results of this situation right now is that we're not going to be face-to-face with our guests nearly as much as we used to. If an emergency comes up and we need to relight a boiler, or address a hot water issue or plumbing leak somewhere, yes, we're going to certainly go into the home and make sure that gets taken care of. We're going to try to do so while the guest is out of the home, so that we're not interacting and crossing paths with them. But there are going to be scenarios that come up where we have to get on it right away. And in which case, we're going to make sure that any of our team members that are doing so are properly equipped to be able to do so and be able to do so safely. Additionally, one of the things that is a brand standard for us is that we do a personalized meet and greet with all of our guests when they check in. Those are unfortunately going to go by the wayside temporarily, just to promote social distancing. We're not going to be, greeting the guests face to face at the home. So instead, what we've done is we've had our team work on putting together a virtual meet and greet for all of our homes. So they're going to walk the guests through the home, show them how everything from the access codes work to how the hot tub works, what you need to do with the chemicals, how AV systems in the home work, how gas fireplaces work, you name it. Everything that we would point out during those meet and greets, we're going to proactively do in those videos. And the guests will actually have those before they arrive, so they'll be able to kind of study up on the home a little bit too. So create that first impression before they've even arrived.
Sure. Well, that's quite a bit. You guys are definitely being thorough. Lots of upgrades and precautionary measures. Has your overhead increased with these new approaches and guidelines?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's, none of this additional stuff that we're doing is coming, at not a cost. So, we're spending more money on cleaning supplies. We're spending more labor on cleaning as well. So all of those costs are going up. There are certain costs that are going to be passed along to the guest in the process. So housekeeping fees will, naturally be going up a little bit, but at the same time, we still need to be competitive in the marketplace. So we are going to be adjusting rates where we need to still be competitive and be in line with the market. I think one thing that we've seen too is that a lot of guests are not balking at an increased housekeeping fee. They look at that and they say, you're going to charge me a little bit more, but you're going to have X, Y, and Z done before I arrive. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you, Tim, Natural Retreats, we mentioned, is a national group. How is the company doing at large?
Honestly, we're still doing well. The nice part about being somewhat of a diversified national brand is that we're operating in the West and the East. So we have, in the East, it's a lot of beach locations that are, they're more heavily dependent on their summer business. So they weren't as impacted by this. For us in the West, obviously the ski season is our big season here. Luckily, the majority of the winter was a great winter for us. We had really just those last 2 weeks of March, and April is relatively shoulder season time anyway, except for we were going to have the benefit of Easter falling at a great time in April this year, which was essentially going to extend March for another week. So obviously that fell off and we didn't have that, but we've been able to be wise with our dollars and operate efficiently where we can, and kind of spread those resources where they're needed to, so that everyone's still able to operate and everybody's able to do so safely, responsibly, and really as efficiently as possible too. And I think one silver lining that might come out of this too is that we're obviously forced right now to operate with as you mentioned, some additional overhead right now. So we've got to get creative as to where we can create some efficiencies as well. And, I think, a lot of companies are going to come out of this stronger and, in a sense, kind of leaner, because you're going to be, you're forced to pressure yourself to operate a little bit more efficiently and, find some creative ways to do so that are going to carry forward.
Yeah. Well, speaking of different ways to make revenue and be creative, you guys also operate Yellowstone luxury tours in Yellowstone National Park. How are reservations for that, and how might that aspect of business be affected by a partially open national park?
Luckily, I think our business model is working pretty well for what we have going on right now with the phased reopening of the park. The nature of that business is private, customized tours. We provide door-to-door transportation, we provide lunch. So, by having the guests be able to avoid going and meeting at a visitor center down in West Yellowstone, getting on a bus with multiple other families, stopping at Old Faithful for lunch, all these popular spots there. We've avoided a lot of that additional contact and kind of are inherently promoting social distancing by the nature of these tours. We're also able to really cater the itinerary for what the guests are looking to do. In a lot of cases, that's sort of the luxury and the operational component of those tours, is that we can, specialize it to what the guest wants, but now we can also use that specialized catered tour to keep them away from those congested areas that they don't want to be in as well. Still show them, all the ins and outs, and just get creative with doing so. Like Old Faithful, for example, everyone's going to want to see Old Faithful, but maybe instead of, sitting on a rocking chair on the porch of the Old Faithful lodge there, we're, hiking around to the opposite side of everything and getting a different vantage point, being away from people doing so. We've got a great group of experienced guides that know the park in and out and can find all those creative ways to, to make the guests feel like they're on their own special private tour and not just with the masses, even if they are in some of the more popular spots of the park.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess, Tim, the last thing I really wanted to ask you was, kind of tell us about the messaging you're giving your guests from a safety standpoint.
Certainly. So, first and foremost, we are making sure that we're providing all of the current guidance to our guests. So whatever directives there are from the governor in our phased reopening, we're making sure that that current information is provided to our guests so that they have the information that they need to make the responsible decisions. One of the things that our team does, we send out an area guide to all of our guests before arrival, which is essentially our top recommendations for dining and activity options in and around Big Sky. What we've done with that is we've catered that to kind of a COVID-friendly area guide, so to speak, where we're providing the recommendations that are promoting social distancing. We're providing the up-to-date information on what capacity limits are in restaurants and retail spaces, for example. Focusing on a lot of the, we have a really strong network of private chefs and caterers that we work with, and providing a lot of those resources to the guests. Really just making sure that they're set up to be able to come here, still enjoy our community and want to come back, but not in a way that's jeopardizing their health or our community or our employees' health. Making sure that they're able to, make those responsible decisions, be a responsible visitor here to Big Sky, and not just flood into every restaurant and kind of take over and not be using their proper PPE as well. I mean, certainly we can't require that our guests are going to wear masks when they go out in our community. We can't require that they're going to keep 6-foot distancing from everybody, but we can give them the advice, we can give them the recommendations, we can give them the expectation that the community wants to have. We need visitors. We're a tourism economy and we need to have visitors, but we also want to make sure that we're keeping everybody in the community safe. And the more people that we get that message out to, for those that may not adhere to it, we've at least gotten the message out to that many more that are going to adhere to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Tim, you guys are doing a great job over there. Really appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the time. Yeah, appreciate it. And now I want to move over to my colleague Brandon Walker in his debut for the Big Sky Virtual Town Hall. Brandon, you're sitting, well, you're sitting not with Candace Carr Strauss, but you are talking with Candace Carr Strauss. What do you got for us?
Thanks, Joe. Well, so next up, as Joe mentioned, we have Candace Carr Strauss. She wears multiple hats in the community. Not only is she the CEO of Visit Big Sky, but also the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. Candace, thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So phase 2 obviously started today. First off, I want to ask you, what are Visit Big Sky and the Chamber focusing on as we take the next step in the reopening process?
Well, I'm actually going to reverse that order, if you don't mind, Brandon. I'm going to start off with the Big Sky Chamber because our efforts there with that organization are really trying to equip our businesses in this new normal that we're all living in to be prepared to take visitors while at the same time ensuring the health and safety of their workers. So everything we've done over the past 2 months has really evolved around that one focus. We created a business assistance hotline about a month and a half ago that provided intellectual support for our businesses. We launched the Big Sky Save Small Business Micro Grant Program that gave 57 micro grants out to the businesses located here in Big Sky to help them survive through all of this pandemic and economic downturn. Most recently, we delivered on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend, which typically is one of the most traveled weekends of the year, but wound up being extremely down year over year. Actually, the worst in recorded history that AAA has been recording visitation for the holiday. But we wanted to make sure our businesses were prepared, so we delivered 80 different reopening bundles, which included PPE such as masks, gloves, hand sanitizer, open for business signage, but also messaging around practicing hand washing, safe social distancing, wearing that PPE and what that meant to us. And then the last part of that equation is we're going to provide some plexiglasses for really consumer-facing retail and restaurant operations that need that resource. These were small businesses from 1 sole proprietors to 20 employees, and who are really fighting to be able to pay payroll, who are struggling to pay their rent. So we were able to, by reallocating some of our FY20 allocations from both the Big Sky Chamber and Visit Big Sky, to grant these monies out to our businesses and help prepare them with what is needed to function today. On the Visit Big Sky side, we're really more customer focused and focusing on that visitor who we hope to attract back to Montana. Our messaging has been a staged messaging throughout this process, whereby we started out just continuing to inspire our future guests because we didn't want to go radio silent, because there is a lot of noise out in that landscape right now of tourist destinations globally who want to bring back visitors to their destination. And so we wanted to make sure we were still staying top of mind. We were communicating plan today for a travel tomorrow, which that hashtag was from the World Travel Organization, and just inspirational messages. As you can see, also the state of Montana has been utilizing the campaign, Montana is worth the wait, and other destinations and regions throughout the state have followed suit to that. However, as we move to the shelter at home being lifted from the governor and allowing Montanans to move about the state, because just like our out-of-state resident, non-resident travel, resident travel is also a huge revenue generator for us. And so we put out some messaging that was feeling empty, as in MT, to our Montana residents. Well, let Big Sky fill your tank back up and come visit now, because we're here and we're ready to welcome you back. So that was our first phase of proactively going out with a message to try to bring guests back to our destination. With the announcement then, which was a 2-part announcement by the governor to move to phase 2 of reopening Montana, the lifting of the 14-day self-quarantine obviously was huge, because to get someone to come here and shelter in place in a quarantine for 2 weeks wasn't a realistic request. So that was the first shoe to drop. However, we all anxiously waited on the edge of our seats to get that recommendation letter to Superintendent Cameron Shawley, who we heard on one of these talks previously, about the opening of the 3 Montana gates, in which the most trafficked is our west entrance as a gateway community to the park that sees almost 1.7 million visitors a year go through its doors. So that happened this morning. I talked to our friends down at the West Yellowstone Visitor Center. There were cars lined up at 8 a.m. for the park preparing to open at 10. And it's been a steady stream of traffic. However, we were pretty smart in that we chose a Monday to do this reopening. I'm not sure if many people follow. We try to watch other national parks and what happens prior to our reaching certain stages, to lessons learned and not have to kind of repeat mistakes. But Arches National Park opened on Friday at 10 a.m. and with 3 hours was at capacity and had to close the park to visitors. So we'll see what our weekend travel looks like and leads to as we move into Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to say the least. So it sounds like you've had your hands full working with a lot of local businesses as things progress. So what have you been hearing in terms of hopes and concerns from local businesses, as this reopening occurs?
Well, I don't want to steal any of the thunder of my compatriot here who's going to speak later, but Erik Morrison is going to speak a lot about that. We've been collaborating and working with many partners, private partners, as well as the Resort Tax Board across the community for that messaging to keep our employees and our residents safe. I think that's the single largest concern that I've heard and continue to hear is how are we going to maintain the low case rate, the low hospitalization rate, the low death rate for COVID and that virus in our local community and in Montana. I did have the opportunity today at 2 o'clock to speak with Director of Commerce, Tara Rice, who from the governor's announcement last Thursday was communicating more out how tourism regions and CBBs, DMOs, the Destination Marketing Organization, which is what Visit Big Sky is going to help carry that message forward to our prospective visitors returning to the state. There are 3 main bullets, and this is all available on the visitmt.com website, but they're really pushing a public health message here for our first 2 weeks as we ramp back up to bringing guests back to our market. And that includes to know before you go. We're really trying to get guests to educate themselves on what those expectations are in our destination for when they come here. The best way is to be prepared, right? To know what you're going into. Second is if you're sick, to stay at home. Obviously seems like a pretty natural and logical thing to do, but I guess we need to reiterate it in this day and age. And then lastly, to understand that some of our services around our destination, our businesses, they're on a phased reopening. So they're not going to be at 100%. And to have patience with that, with our hospitality frontline workers and those small businesses as they're trying to adapt to operations in this new normal. So really to be patient and understanding and respectful. So I personally my concern is that we can do all of this messaging and put it all out there. However, what we're really going to see in return is dependent on the individuals who come. I had to take a last minute 25-hour road trip to St. George's this past weekend, Saturday and back Sunday, just to pick up my mother, who is an at-risk individual. And you would never know a public health pandemic is going on in St. George's, Utah. The state of Utah was never under a stay-at-home directive. And so the number of people who are walking around the destination, no masks, no gloves, in spite of all the signage that you do see when you walk into different places, was pretty startling. So I think what our next challenge as a destination will be is that we're doing all of these things proactively to communicate what our expectations are and what we request visitors to do. But I think we need to be prepared that if we don't see that being honored, what are our next steps in mandating that be done in order to service someone at a business?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned traffic and traveling and preparedness. So that leads into my next question. In your opinion, what should Big Sky businesses be focusing on most with the increased traffic entering the community?
Well, I think we need to be prepared to walk the walk. We have to model the behavior that we ourselves expect to see in others coming here. And if we aren't willing, as we are at our daily job that's consumer facing, to wear a mask or wear gloves, then how can we expect that of those who are entering the business? And so I think there's a broad spectrum of people everywhere and what their thoughts are on the impact of utilizing that PPE. But I think it's an employer's responsibility to the public and to their workers to ensure that their workers are adhering to those new restrictions in wearing those pieces of equipment and practicing safe social distancing, hand sanitizing, etc. I think it's important to note that they should also recognize all of the resources that are available to them as a business to reopen during this time. So between the Gallatin City County Public Health Board, as well as national industry associations such as the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the National Restaurant Association, they've all provided very clear guidelines on how to operate safely, from trainings that are via webinar, as well as written, to checklists and trainings for your employees on how to function. And so I hope that all of our businesses will know and can reference the bigskychamber.com website where those resources can be found. They should never feel that they're alone in this effort to reopen their business.
Yeah, absolutely. So you briefly touched on messaging before, especially at the state level. So I wanted to take a step back and revisit that. What is Visit Big Sky's messaging going to be focused on as travelers begin to circulate freely throughout the state?
Yeah, so as we've moved from that plan today for travel tomorrow and inspirational, it was keep the dream alive as opposed to come live the dream now. So we will be much more proactively encouraging and asking and showing why our visitors should choose Big Sky at this time for their next destination visit. We've had a campaign that's been running really since the beginning of March. It was a demand-driven campaign, a cost-per-click campaign of anyone searching for lodging in and around Yellowstone from our direct flight markets as well as within the state of Montana. And that was a very clear message of our unique selling proposition as a gateway community that has unparalleled accommodations, diverse dining options, and outdoor recreationist pursuits that are just out of this world. So that positioning has been out there and continues to be out there, and demand in that campaign exceeds that which we've been serving up with our limited resources. And so we hope as we move forward to be able to continue to serve that demand with those messages. And in addition, we'll be launching another campaign here probably in the next week that is retrofencing and retargeting all of our guests that were here for the winter 1920 season. Those individuals already know us. They know our small town charm. I think they can have a sense of security and safety in returning here. And some of Visit Big Sky's summer research from this past summer showed that 83% of our visitors who were surveyed during that time are repeat visitors to the destination from winter to summer.
All right. Well, thank you for that information. Last question I have for you is a bit of a reflection, but I wanted to get your opinion. If you could choose one aspect of life before the pandemic to restore, what would it be and why?
Aspect of life is to travel freely. You know, it's interesting. I took this car ride on Saturday and I crossed the borders of 3 states, three big states that take a very long time to traverse. And having lived in Europe where individual countries are reflective of what our states are, our freedom to jump in a car and drive, 10 hours and be somewhere else is really, truly unique to us as Americans. And if I could push any button, it would be to push back that to travel domestically as well as globally with the freedom that we did before. It will not be the same for quite a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we did show the true value of the visitor economy, what it means for our local communities as an economic driver that provides the quality of life and our livelihoods in the places that we do get to live in and call home, these beautiful, amazing spaces in Montana. And so I hope we don't take that away, lose that feeling of how valuable it is, because I think we can take for granted sometimes that visitors do have a choice of where they go for their trip. And we need to embrace that, welcome those visitors, and cherish the fact that we are chosen.
Yeah, that's a great point. Well, Candace, thank you for your insight on the tourism and commerce front. Appreciate you speaking with us today.
Brandon, can I throw in one little sidebar? I do have a message from the Montana Department of Commerce. As everybody is aware, we have the 3 bridge decks projects going on here in Big Sky. And they just really would like to ensure that people are prepared to stop near those bridge areas and only proceed when the traffic light is green, that there are vehicles waiting in line. And so to be cognizant of all that is going around, around you. There are pull-ins to different businesses as well as driving out of different businesses. And so there's a lot going on, and we just don't want to see anyone be hurt. We will be including this in our visitor communications as well. And that if you do see dangerous driving, you can call 911, but you can also call the Gallatin County non-emergency dispatch number, which is 406-582-2100. Because the last thing we want is anyone hurt while we're making infrastructure improvements to Montana Highway 64 and US Highway 191. Thanks, and I apologize for the last minute insertion.
No, no problem at all. Thank you for that note. It was very important. But thank you again for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we've got an avid snowboarder. You've probably seen him on a slope somewhere in Big Sky. And oh yeah, he's also the marketing and events manager of the Town Center Owners Association. Erik Morrison, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Brandon. Hey, Joe. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we've officially entered phase 2. As the marketing and events manager of the TCOA, can you describe the current pulse of the community? What are you hearing?
Honestly, the pulse or vibe of the community from our partners and a lot of the businesses that we're talking to is kind of goes across the entire spectrum, to be quite honest. I think everybody feels overall pretty safe for now, for all of us who've been here, who quarantined, and who did an amazing job in making the sacrifice and flattening the curve. I think amongst ourselves in our community, in our region, people feel good. People are pretty freaked out about phase 2 reopening and what that means for Big Sky for sure. And depending on who you talk to, some are advocating for much harder hardline restrictions, and others are definitely not taking it seriously.
So discussing, safety precautions, the TCOA, along with a wealth of other community organizations, recently launched the Stay Safe, Stay Open, Stay Strong campaign. Can you describe the considerable donation that the campaign received?
Sure. So I guess we've actually received a couple of different donations. The first and foremost would be just time and resources. This community is amazing. When things come up and we have big issues to solve, people rally and they come together, and community organizations come together and Visit Big Sky, the Chamber, Lomond Lands, Roxy's. Everybody's been coming forth and putting forth a ton of time and energy, design work, obviously a lot of physical resources like what Candace described with the COVID care packages that went out to all the businesses, not just in Town Center, but all over the community. Those were, that's substantial. Another thing that's been kind of a big donation that we saw was the Montana Mass. So there's this gentleman, Will McCollum, who he lives up here for part of the year and in Denver part of the year, and he wound up getting quarantined here. And during the quarantine, kind of got to see a different side of Big Sky, got to see the fabric of our community, and was really touched by it. And we kind of became COVID buddies over this time. And when I talked to him a little bit about this campaign and what we were doing, he wanted to give back to Big Sky that kind of has taken care of him during this time. So he wound up helping us to purchase through the Moonlight Community Foundation thousands of Montana masks. So they're Montana-made PPEs from Spark R&D down in Bozeman. And we're going to be giving those out to all the frontline workers, EMS, hospital, et cetera, and honestly anybody in Big Sky who wants them while supplies last, kind of as a backstop in case we do have a significant event here in the spike. We can't say that these masks are better than the KN95 masks, but they do have a really good seal. They're similar technology, little tweak on the design, and it was a really kind donation for sure. Yeah,
it's a fantastic story. So staying on the topic of the campaign, how will the Town Center Owners Association measure the success of any goals that have been determined?
Well, the success is pretty much going to be measured with three things: our ability to keep Big Sky local hospitalizations of COVID-19 cases to a minimum within the capacity of Big Sky Medical Center in our region. Ideally maintain 0 Big Sky local COVID-related deaths, and doing all this while we can keep our borders and our businesses open for the summer season, basically through the 1st of October.
Yeah, absolutely. So, being involved with Town Center and so many businesses in the area, what do you believe are Big Sky's key factors of a safe reopening that will eventually allow us to return to normal day-to-day life?
Yeah, that's going to really rely upon like what Candace was talking about with us walking the walk. Like we need as a community for this to really be effective. We need to be vigilant in our own efforts of all the things that we're asking of everyone. So the masking, the social distancing, sanitization, the consistency of that is going to be vital for us to get any adoption from the second homeowners and the destination tourists. Yeah,
absolutely. It's going to be a collective effort if we're going to continue to progress.
One other thing in regards to that, I'd also say the consistency in our messaging, and that's not just in the messaging that we put out around the campaign, and what you're going to see for signage around town or maybe in an ad or on social, but the consistency in the message that each of us carries with us and brings into our community. So I would like to see all of us to be empowered to be able to say, this is what we're doing. This is what I do. This is why. And to raise the level of awareness for people who are coming here who don't be harsh on them, just invite them to be part of this campaign, because we need their buy-in. We need them for many reasons for this to succeed.
Yeah, it's an all-inclusive deal. So this one's a 2-for-1 deal. What is your greatest hope as well as your greatest fear as the statewide reopening process continues to ramp up?
Oh man. My greatest hope obviously would be for us to hit our goals that we talked about. But honestly, beyond that, my greatest hope would be for us to take the collaboration and the mobilization of resources of what we've been able to do with COVID, just within our community, and to see that applied to other greater challenges within our community moving forward. Like it really is amazing what we've been able to do in such a short period of time. I would love to see those same strategies applied to Big Sky's other wicked problems.
Awesome. All right, Erik. Well, that is all I had for questions for you, but we do have one question from the audience. This one comes from Janelle. Erik, is there a website that describes the current projects that are underway in the town center and anticipated completion dates?
In part, we have our landing page. It has some information about that, and it will be updated with more things as they come. I'm happy to drop it into the feed for anybody who'd like it.
Awesome, perfect. Well, thank you, Erik. We appreciate your time today and for joining us and discussing everything that you have to do going on in town center.
Thanks.
All right, Joe, take it away for our last guest of tonight.
Thank you, Brandon. And thanks so much, Erik, for joining us this evening. You guys have a lot of work cut out for you as we approach the summer, and you're doing a phenomenal job. So thanks for all of that. Kris Inman is the manager of strategic partnerships and engagement for the Wildlife Conservation Society. She's a wildlife biologist, and she is also a bear researcher. On Memorial Day this year, Big Sky local Peter Scherfig was attacked by a grizzly bear while he was mountain biking. He's in critical but stable condition, but it is a wake-up call for both locals and visitors this summer. As we move into the summer months, Kris WCS and the Fish, Wildlife, and Parks will certainly have their hands full. Thanks for coming on the show tonight, Kris.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, and sadly under this unfortunate experience for Mr. Scherfig and his family. I'd like to start with, with the Memorial Day grizzly attack. How is Mr. Scherfig doing? From what I've heard, he's still in critical condition and not conscious right now, but as he hopefully begins to recover, we'll see some positive things turn for him.
Sure. Why did this encounter happen?
Sure. So encounters like this are fairly rare, but they can happen and will be happening more and more as grizzly bears and people are sharing the landscape. With a mountain bike situation, these are particularly more likely to not go as well as other encounters can be, because mountain bikers are moving very quietly at high rates of speed. Grizzly bears and black bears are traveling down those same areas and trails, and so they don't hear a biker coming, and by the time they do come upon each other, it usually is something that can't be avoided.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that's particularly alarming about these kind of events, is that the mountain bikers are traveling very quietly at high rates of speed, and they're not looking around in front of them to any hazards that might be there. They're more focused on the ground in front of them and any hazards that might be immediately present.
Mm-hmm. Should people be concerned? I mean, as of now, the investigation is still ongoing, but Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has so far labeled this bear as non-predatory. What does that mean?
Sure. So, all points from the investigation, the initial investigation, is that it was a surprise encounter, just as what I spoke to, that the mountain biker, he was traveling at a high rate of speed, very quietly, and surprised the bear. They'll know more, as they continue to investigate this and give a report back out to the public once they fully close the investigation. But what it means is that you can anticipate that there's a grizzly bear or in the area, and not necessarily just this bear, but there could be other bears in the area as well, and that there's certain things that you can do to keep yourself safe while traveling in grizzly bear country.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about a couple things we can do differently. We are all hoping for the speedy recovery of Peter Scherfig. Our hearts and prayers go out to him and to his family, local family. But Peter Scherfig was riding alone that day. Talk about a little bit more about what we can do differently in bear country and what we can learn from this.
Absolutely. So, and I would say, it's an unfortunate experience for Mr. Scherfig, and not something that that he's in any way to be blamed for. Things that we recommend doing with mountain biking is very similar to what we recommend with hiking in bear country. So it's traveling in groups of 3 or more, carry bear spray, and know how to use it. I can direct you to a Facebook link that Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has put out with a video that you can watch. I'll actually just quickly share that screen with you guys.
That'd be great.
Just so folks can see that. Do you see the Facebook page? Can you see it?
Yes. Yes, we can see it. Yep. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
Yep. So if you go to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Facebook page and you scroll down to the video section, you'll see bear spray basics, and you can click on that video and get a really good information about how to use bear spray safely, because it's not just carrying bear spray that you want to do, it's knowing how to use it. And so
Yeah.
also one of the things that's important for mountain bikers too is to carry the bear spray on their person rather than on the bike. If a surprise encounter happens and there's a collision, you and the bike could be separated. So you want that bear spray on you. And then also you want your fellow riders carrying bear spray because you likely won't have time to be able to respond in that situation. And it'd be their job to respond and also call for help and help get you out of there. And traveling with more people also is noisier, so you want to make noise. There's some bells that are out there that may help in that regard. Being loud when you come to a place where there might be more noise because there's water running by, traffic in the distance that could be heard, so you want to make more noise in those cases. Coming around a corner or a place with heavy vegetation, be noisy, slow down, and be more vigilant and be more aware of what might be in front of you.
Mm-hmm. Well, grizzlies, wolves, a lot of these animals are part of why we live in a place like this. Candace talked about visitor expectations. And Big Sky and West Yellowstone are some of the first communities that bears will encounter as they expand beyond Yellowstone National Park boundaries. What else can people do to be prepared to head out in the woods? And I've got a follow-up question to that as well.
Okay, so along the lines of what I just said, about traveling in groups and carrying bear spray, but you should always just expect that you're going to see a bear anywhere in Montana now. Grizzly bears have recovered from Yellowstone, and as a result of that, they are expanding out into more human-influenced landscapes and increasing in those areas. And we're starting to see that in Big Sky. There's been more sightings of grizzly bears. We'll continue to see more sightings. And it also becomes one of the things that Bear Smart Big Sky, a program that WCS coordinates with a lot of participation by folks in Big Sky, is looking at ways in which to empower communities, speaking kind of to what Erik Morrison spoke of about changing our behaviors in the COVID-19 era. We have to change our behaviors living in bear country. And so the goal of Bear Smart Big Sky is to give the information to inform the community to take actions that keep themselves safe while at play, work, and at home.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, so you mentioned grizzly bears numbers are recovering. What are those numbers looking like? And are you seeing a fluctuation in the past few years?
Yeah, so there's a couple of recovery zones for grizzly bears, and the closest recovery zone for us is Greater Yellowstone. And the numbers last year were estimated around 728 grizzly bears. And that trend is fairly stable, and that's stable because grizzly bears are reaching carrying capacity of the land in Yellowstone. And so as I mentioned, they're moving out and expanding, finding new territories, and those new territories are where people tend to be. And so it becomes increasingly important for us to be aware that bears are moving around quite a bit, and you can expect to see them anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. They can come up out of almost nowhere, it seems like, and not to frighten people, but it is important that people understand that this is bear country and that that these interactions can happen. So the Endangered Species Act and conversations surrounding that have been back and forth over the past couple years, especially. I wonder if you'd talk a little about where that conversation is right now.
Sure. From a scientific standpoint, the grizzly bear is considered recovered, and kind of going back to what I spoke to, that grizzly bears have reached carrying capacity or expanding beyond Greater Yellowstone. But regardless of the debate whether we keep the bear listed or not, the thing that we need to do most for bears is, because they're expanding into more human influenced areas, is learning how to live with them and stay safe for both ourselves and for the bear. And that's one of the major things that we're doing at WCS and with Bear Smart Big Sky is providing tools to folks so that they understand the actions that they can take and the practices that they can take at home and while recreating to keep themselves safe or safer. And as well as having some regulations in place that help to guide those practices and help in enforcement of those practices as well. But more than anything, it really requires the community to understand that these things can happen to them, and that there's actions that we can take, and it becomes especially important and critical for us to be safe, not only while we're on our trails and recreating, but also to be safe at home by having bear resistant trash. That's one of the biggest things that we can do. And the Bear Smart Big Sky Council has worked really well with our local trash companies to make it an affordable option. It just costs $5 more a month to change to bear resistant trash. And that's something especially important to do to make sure that bears behave and remain wild and don't frequent our homes. And so.
Yeah, no, that's really important to talk about those bear resistant trash cans. Obviously we want to limit those interactions. Would that be more, black bear, grizzly bear, or any bear type situation that might be involved in trash cans?
Both. So bears are generalists in their behavior, so they're going to acquire the food that's the easiest to get to. And if trash is readily available, that's where they're going to go, and then they learn that behavior. And it's when they learn that behavior that it becomes a little bit more dangerous, and it's certainly more dangerous with a grizzly bear than it is with a black bear. But anytime an animal becomes habituated and relaxed around people, it's not a good situation.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Kris. If people are interested in engaging further with Bear Smart Big Sky, how would they go about that?
Sure. We announce our Bear Smart Big Sky Council meetings on our website, which is wcsmontana.org/calendar. But you can also reach out to me or folks at Outlaw Partners and Explore Big Sky also have that information as well, because we work quite a bit with you guys and appreciate the partnership.
Yeah, well, we certainly do as well. We appreciate you, Kris, and your groups keeping us informed, and that is what it's about, right? It's about education and recognizing that that these aren't just stories. These are real people. These are real situations, and people should not be scared necessarily of these animals, but should understand that we're in their land, huh?
Absolutely. Yep. To be prepared while you're out there. And respect them.
Absolutely. Respect them for sure. That's about all I got. I appreciate your time, Kris. Brandon, any follow-up questions from you?
Nothing on my end, Joe.
Okay. All right. Well, Kris, thank you so much. We really appreciate the work you guys are doing. It is critical. And as we come into a potentially, busy summer season of tourism in the area, education and being prepared are really where everyone needs to be. So thank you for the work you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And hopefully folks will stay safe in a number of fronts this summer, whether they're out recreating, enjoying this great place, or as things change and evolve with COVID-19. And appreciate all the work of folks on the panel tonight. It was good hearing what you guys are all doing. It's great work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we really have had a great panel tonight. And, we heard about how Montana businesses and towns are shifting into this second phase of the state's reopening plan. And, discussing with Kris Inman the importance of safety and respect in bear country. Before we sign off, we'd be remiss to not recognize our current national situation. We are indeed living in a strange time that in the past week has somehow gotten stranger in the midst of this global pandemic. And as America tries to recover and reopen, the country is continues to struggle with racism, equity, and violence. Across the country, we're searching for answers, and we're looking for the good and real parts of ourselves that I pray that we haven't lost. It's going to take a concerted effort, but we must face ourselves, and we must not succumb to violence. Yesterday in Bozeman, about 2,000 people marched in protest to the alleged murder of George Floyd by Minneapolis police. It was a peaceful march as protesters exercised their First Amendment rights to free speech and assembly. It is a constitutional right, but violence has no place in it. I just want to say kudos to these demonstrators for exercising that restraint. And we appreciate you all joining us this evening. We're holding Big Sky Town Halls the first week of each month going forward, and we'll be back here on July 6th with the next one, and we hope you'll join us then. On behalf of EBS Newspaper and Outlaw Partners, Brandon and I would like to thank each of our panelists tonight, and again, thank our sponsors, Big Sky Build and the Big Sky Chamber of Commerce. You guys are making these conversations possible. And thanks again to our viewers. We're here for you. So stay safe and be kind to one another. We'll see you next time.